Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I share the anger and frustration expressed by my honourable friend, the member for Keighley and Ilkley, about the lack of progress on inquiring into the rape gangs, and I was incredibly disappointed by the failure to answer a single question put to the Minister by my honourable friend, the Shadow Minister, including the refusal to acknowledge that these crimes were racially and religiously aggravated. So I want to repeat just one of those questions. In many of the rape gang cases, counsellors, council workers and police officers were complicit and often corrupt. So why is the government refusing to set up a specialist unit in the National Crime Agency to investigate those who should have protected those innocent girls and instead participated in and facilitated their abuse?
To answer the honourable gentleman's question, is that if there is criminal cases that can be taken against any of these people, I am absolutely certain that the task force that is working across to improve the arrests, as we have talked about, how we have seen an increase in arrests, but I am more than happy to go and speak to the task force and see where there can be criminal cases taken against those people. I am more than happy to see those people locked up for as long as they deserve. However, what I would say is that without the mandatory reporting duty on the statute books, we were left for some decades without that to be able to take to task criminally people who covered this up. We will rectify that.
Jess Phillips, who never misses a chance to parade herself as a crusader for women's rights and justice, has once again shown her true colors, a coward wrapped in the veil of performative morality. Today, while the victims of rape gangs continue to suffer in silence, while families are still waiting for justice, Jess Phillips did what she does best: emote on television, dodge uncomfortable truths, and protect her political brand at the expense of actual victims. Once again, the so-called local inquiries, already toothless and pathetic, have been watered down even further. And who's right there helping dilute any hope of real accountability? Jess Phillips, of course. She refused outright to acknowledge the obvious. These were religiously aggravated crimes. She couldn't even bring herself to say it. Why? Because speaking the truth might offend the wrong demographic, and Labour, spineless as ever, fears votes more than it fears injustice. Worse still, Labour again refused to allow the National Crime Agency to properly investigate corrupt police officers and complicit local councillors who turned a blind eye while vulnerable girls were groomed, abused, and discarded like garbage. And Jess Phillips, the self-declared voice for abused women, said absolutely nothing when it comes to challenging real power or naming the real enablers. She's nowhere to be found. Jess Phillips has become the poster child for selective outrage. She'll cry on cue if a tech billionaire hurts her feelings on Twitter, but she won't shed a single tear for the girls she claims to fight for. She talks a big game about justice and victim advocacy. But when those victims are inconvenient, politically sensitive, or don't fit the narrative, she retreats into spin and silence. She is not a voice for the voiceless. She is a voice for what's politically expedient. While she tweets out her self-righteous monologues and plays the feminist hero in front of cameras, real victims are left behind. Again, today, she didn't just fail them. She betrayed them. And no amount of moral grandstanding will wash that stain away.
It's not slightly unfair, it's very unfair. Pool is a sex-affected sport, which means that males have advantages, physical advantages compared to females, and therefore you must have a female-only category in order for females to take part and excel in this sport fairly. The physical advantages males have include they are on average taller, they have longer arms and legs so they can reach across the table more easily, they have more power so they can get more power behind the break shot, which is the most important shot of the whole game. So this is a sex-affected sport and therefore a female category is necessary. If you allow males into the female category, Harriet Haynes is male, then it ceases to be the female category and becomes a mixed sex category. So yes, this federation have done the right thing to say females only in the female category, but unfortunately this selfish entitled man is suing them. And, I hope they win. And this case will be very important for the Equality Act, which allows single-sex sport in sex-affected sports, of which pool is one.
To what extent, you mentioned there's an advantage through being a man, but in pool, is it quite slight compared to football or cricket or tennis, that you are in a relatively small space and strength isn't everything in pool, is it? It's more accuracy.
Well, Dr. Emma Hilton is giving chapter and verse on the advantages that males have over females in pool at the court case going on. But whether or not the sex differences in any particular sport are great or small doesn't really matter. If they exist, however small, then there must be a female category. The advantage in sports varies. So in my sport, running, it's roughly 10% at elite level. In punching power, it's 162%. But because running is a smaller percentage, you can't say, oh, well, it's only a small percentage, let's get rid of the female category. If there is any sex difference between males and females, then you must have a female category. And what Harriet Haynes and his team are effectively calling for is the end of women's pool. And I wish they would stop arguing about, gender reassignment discrimination and make the case for ending women's pool, which is what they want.
All right, well, Mara, thank you very much. I have to confess, I agree with every word you've said, and I'm very grateful to you for joining me. But we have got a statement. So when previously asked about the issue, Harriet Haynes, who is a man calling himself Harriet, hit back at the idea that men have an advantage, saying, my success in pool in general is down to my efforts, whether in the women's section or open section. Coaching helped me progress. And at his court hearing, Haynes submitted expert evidence to support his case, including from an American professor who argues that as long as a player could break above a certain speed, something achievable by both sexes, there was no inherent advantage gained by higher cue velocity. Well, that's all very interesting. Thank you again to Mara.
It's not slightly unfair. It is very unfair. That was the powerful declaration from Olympic marathon runner Mara Yamachi in response to the news that the International Pool Billiards Federation is being sued by a trans-identified male player banned from competing in women's events. In a society increasingly obsessed with political correctness over biological reality, Yamauchi's words cut through the noise like a siren of reason. She makes a point that should be obvious, but which too many institutions are terrified to acknowledge. Pool is a sex-affected sport. It may not be as physically intense as track and field or football, but factors like hand-eye coordination, mental resilience, focus under pressure, and muscle control are still influenced by biological sex. To allow someone who went through male puberty to compete against women isn't inclusion. It's a distortion of fairness and the very integrity of women's sport.